start recording.
We are on Aleph Gimel. A minor who has not produced two hairs. Rabbi Yehuda says his truma is truma.
Okay, well, okay, go ahead. We'll do that. It's fine. We'll do that. We'll do that first and catch up to the next one
Oh,
later.
I missed the back. I can go back. Go back. I'm sorry. No, let me go to the back. I made a mistake.
Okay.
I was because I didn't see. Okay, this is Gimel no Gimel
Yes, Gimuches, yes.
If one intended to say truma and said Maisa, but said truma Ola, but he said Shlomin, but he said Ola, then I shall not go into this house, and he said into that one, that I shall not derive benefit from this one. But he said that one, he has said nothing until his mouth and heart agree. A non-Jew Hutian, their truma is truma. Their meiser is a meiser, and the hallowed things are holy. Rabbi Yehuda says Kerem Mavai does not apply to a non-Jew, but the Chachamim say it applies. The truma of a non-Jew renders to a meduma and is liable to the added fifth, but Reb Shimon exempts. If one separates part of truma and maestros, he may take from it truma for it, but not for another place. Reb Meir says he may take truma and maestros also for another place. Okay.
Okay. All right. So now our Mishnah base is a bit difficult to understand if you're just reading the pashtus of the words. So we have to have a little bit of background over here. Is that this the context we're going to have is where you have an Am Haaretz who's the owner of the granary, and he's employed a chaver to work for him and included food in the bargain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that he's going to give him lunch or whatever it is. Okay, so now the situation is Misha Hayu Perosav Magura. So now you've got this massive pile inside the granary. It's a huge amount of grain. It hasn't been mastered yet. Now we can presume it has had truma taken off it, but they haven't taken off yet because Amaya Aretz are trusted on truma.
Right.
Right. The demai is only regarding Maser Rishon, Chumas Maser, and Maser Sheni or Maser Oni. Okay, and this Mishnah places us in the third year or the sixth year of the cycle, in which it's a Maser Oni year. Okay, so this is for our background over here. Okay, so Misha Hayu Perosav Magura. So we're in the granary, and the chaver is in the granary, and he notices that the owner says, "V'nasan sa'a leben Levi." He gives one sa'a of grain to a Levi, usa'a la'ani, and he also gives a sa'a to a poor person. Okay, so now says the chaver to himself, "Well, normally, I wouldn't trust this Amaretz about the produce if he just told me, but I just watched him giving a sa'ah of produce to a Levi. That mistama is the Maser Rishon, and he's given another sa'ah of produce to an ani, so that's probably the Maser Ani." Okay, now, of course, two sa'ahs like that is enough to exempt a total of 10 sa'ah, so basically 8 sa'ah that's left.
Right.
Okay, now 8 sa'ah is not a huge amount. It's certainly not the whole granary.
Right.
Okay, but now what the chaver wants to know is, okay, so now can I trust this Amaretz about eating from this granary now, at least up to the level of 8 sa'ahs? Okay. So he's Nasan Sa'al Leben Levi V'Sa'al Ani Mafrish Od Shmonis In V'Ochlan. So now the chaver can take out 8 sa'ah over there if that's what his due is, or if there are chaver workers who are a whole bunch of chaver workers who are entitled to up to 8 sa'ahs. They're allowed to, even if it's more than their next meal. Okay, they can trust that thing for however many meals they've got, and eat up to 8 sa'ahs because they've seen the master and all the masters being taken off it. Okay, this is Divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir, you can trust him up to up to the full 8 sa'ah. Chachamim omrim eino mafrish ela lefi cheshbon. you can only separate out according to a calculation. Now, what's the cheshbon over here? Which basically is saying that he probably exempted that yes, the balabais, the Amaret's balabais, probably did give Maser Rishon and Maser Ani, but that was only in order to exempt one meal for the chaver. The rest of it is on the. You can't assume that it's not all going to that it's that there may not have been other considerations. For example, he may have decided that only enough for a meal for the chaver. He only wanted to give Maser Rishon and Maser Ani in order to exempt a meal for his chaver worker, but the rest was a gift to the Kohen, or just a gift to the Ani. Okay, or it may be that he wanted to take that he wanted to take some grain for himself. You just don't know what his cheshbonos are. So say the Chachamim, all that the chaver worker can rely on is the fact that his next meal is kosher, but he can't go more than one meal into the future.
They only rely that one meal is kosher.
One meal has been covered by his masras, but he can't take from a second meal from there, because now we're back into the parasha of Demai.
Okay, all
right. Okay. Shiur Truma. So now what we said that Min Torah, if somebody can exempt an entire harvest with 1 grain of wheat as Truma. Okay. However, Chachamim said, let's make sure that the Kohen gets a reasonable portion over here. Okay. So they were koveya shiurim for how much you need to give for Truma. Ayin yafa echad me'arbaim. If somebody is generous, then you should give 1/40th or 2.5%. Beis Shammai omrim mishloshim. So no, says Beis Shammai, you should give 1/30th. Okay, so that's 3.3%. Okay, Beinonis, returning to Beis Hillel, Beinonis mechamishim. So the 1/50th is an average portion, which is 2% of the harvest. Not spoken out is the opinions of Beis Shammai, which basically 10, which is 10 below, or 10, what Beis Hillel say in the denominator each time. So Beis Hillel say Beinonis is mechamishim v'hara mishishim, so 1/60th or 1.67%. So now Beis Shammai are saying that Beinoni would give 1/40th, and an Ayin Ra would give 1/50th. Okay, but we don't focus too much in the coming Mishnayos on Beis Shammai's opinion, because the halacha follows Beis Hillel. Okay, so again, 1/40th is a generous portion, 1/50th is an average, and 1/60th is the miserly portion, but nonetheless acceptable. Okay, so now comes the guy, Taram v'ala biyado echad mishishim. So if somebody is randomly taking out, remember Truma is done by estimate,
right?
And he thought he was giving more, but he came out and it turns out that what he had was 1/60th. Okay, Truma ve'eno tzarech litrom. So once he's brought out that 1/60th, this is valid Truma. He doesn't need to do anything further, even if he had in mind that he wanted to take out more. Okay. Now he says, come on, I can't give such a little amount to the coin. Let me take out a little bit more. Chaza v'hosif. Oh, now what's happening is, the reality is that let's just take the step back here. When he first reaches in to take out the truma, the whole pile is tevel. As soon as he withdraws it, if it's a valid truma, then what he's got in his hand or his bucket is truma, and everything else is chulin metukanim. Well, chulin that's had truma taken out of it. That chulin now still needs to have masras taken off it. Okay, the bucket of truma is just truma. He has to give that to the coin. The coin doesn't have to separate anything further from it. However, here's the case where he wanted to give, let's say, a 40th, and he came up with a 60th, and he said, "Oh, come on, I want to give more than that." Now, as he comes back into the pile, The pile that he's going into now is chulin that's waiting for maaser. He's allowed to take out more for the kohen, but now this what he's taken out is chulin, and it's going to need to have chumas masters taken off it as well. So that's what the Mishnah is telling us. Chazav Hosef, if he goes back in and tries to take more chayav b'mastras, then before you can give that to the kohen, he has to take off mastras.
We had something similar to that yesterday, I think. It's similar that way if you go back into the pile.
Right. Now that was where we were, where he took out insufficient amount.
Mhm.
Okay. So the question where the amount that he took out was insufficient and he wanted to go back for a second load in order to make it sufficient. The question was whether he's now dipping into the part that's matukan and the part that's table in equal proportions. And we said it's fine. If it's going into the same pile, then all he has to do is keep taking out from the same pile, and we're not koshesh for the fact that he might be taking out matukanim.
Excuse me. That was your sneeze from yesterday. That,
It was what?
that was your sneeze from yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Just
All right.
lying. It was lying in ambush. Okay. Chazavos, if it's chayv masters. Okay. Ala biyado mishishim ve'echad. If, however, he reached in and took out a 61st truma, v'yachzor v'yisram k'moshu lamod. But then what he's taken out is truma, but he must go back and take another round. So there's our case again, where he took out an insufficient amount. He hasn't yet exempted the pile. So therefore, if he reaches in again and takes out more, then that's full on truma, and he doesn't have to worry about masters coming out of it. Okay, because 161st does not exempt it because of what Chazal said. Okay, so Yachzor Yitram Kemos Shehu Lamud, however much he's accustomed to. B'mida uva mishkal v'minyan. But on the second drawing, he's actually allowed to use a measuring cup.
Oh.
Because because remember, it's supposed to be done by estimate, but in our case over here, he's already taken out the first bit by estimate. So adding measured to an estimate is not going to really turn it into something measured. As long as there's any part that's uncertain, it's not going to be a perfect measurement. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer af shelo min hamukaf. And Rabbi Yehuda says, you can even take from here, from the second round, you're even allowed to take shelo min hamukaf. Now, where did we see in our other interesting, because that was Rabbi Meir in Mishnah Aleph.
Mm-hmm.
It was Rabbi Meir in Mishnah Aleph who said that he can take out for other people now. That's interesting. I would have.
What about?
That is interesting because in the first, actually, I'm just realizing now in Mishnah Aleph. In Mishnah Aleph, we said with Rabbi Meir saying that he can be motzi for l'makom chumas and mastras, and we said the halacha is not like Rabbi Meir, but in our Mishnah here, in Mishnah Gimel, Rabbi Yehuda says af shelo min hamukaf. The Pekati said that this is the halacha. So what he's saying, so let's say he took out less than a 60th. Now when he goes in the second time, he's aiming to complete the truma for this pile, and at the same time, he can take truma for another pile that's not present. That's even if it's not minamukaf, if he's taking whatever the extra is, because he's going to go in and take out more from this pile. Why does he? Oh no! I read Kahati wrong. Barim Tana Kama Sove She'af. So the v'chein halacha is going on the Tanakama. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda.
No,
Okay.
It says, however, Rabbi Yehuda confines this halakha to the original truma separation, but in our case of completing the truma measure, he may draw produce for which is not close by. However, the first Tana holds that this too may be separated only from that which is close by, which is the halacha. Right.
Right. Okay. So the halacha is like the Tanna Kamma, not like Rabbi Yehuda. Fine. Okay. My confusion is resolved. Mishnah Dalet. Ha'omer lishlucho. The guy says to his proxy, say utrom torem kedata shel balabais. So now the proxy, the shaliach, has to go according to what the balabais knows. And so even if the shaliach himself personally for his own produce is generous and he knows that the balabais is a little more stingy, or vice versa, if he's a little more stingy but he knows that the balabais is generous, his das is irrelevant over here. He has to do exactly what the balabais told him to do because he is just a proxy. He's not allowed to do things of his own accord. So the balabais tells him, go and take truma, and he gets to the granary and says, hold on a second, I don't actually know what he normally does. Okay, so if he doesn't know what the balabais's practice is, torem kebeinonis, then he must follow the practice of a beinonis, in other words, 2%. Okay, echad michamishim. Asara or Hosif Asara Truma. However, if he gave a 40th or gave a 60th, either way, it's valid because he didn't know. But if you lechatchila, he should give like a benoni. But if he did in either other direction, his shlichus is still valid. He did what the balabais told him, and the balabais didn't give him any specific instructions about how much to give. Okay, im niskavin lohosif afilu achas. If, however, he decides to change what the balabais told him to do, even if they told him take 150th, and he says, okay, I'll take 151st or 149th. Ain't truma sa truma. He's invalidated his shlichus. Once he's no longer a valid shaliach, then he falls under the gedder of hatorim mishaena shilo. Then he's taking truma from something that's not his, which he has no right to do, and the truma becomes invalid. And we saw that in the very first Mishna of the Masechta. Yeah?
Okay, I got it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I remember that.
All right. Then we can go back to Aleph Gimel.
A minor who has not produced 2 hairs. Rabbi Yehuda says his truma is truma, and Rabbi Yoshi says if he has not reached the age of vows, his truma is not truma, but after he has reached the age of vows, his truma is truma. One may not separate truma from olives for oil, or from grapes for wine, but if one did separate, Beit Shammai says they are truma for themselves, but Beis Hillel says that truma is not truma. One may not separate truma from lechet, shika, peah, or hefker, but from ma'aser rishon, from which truma has been separated, or from ma'aser sheni, or holy things which have been redeemed, or from the libel for the exempt, or from the exempt for the libel, or from detached for attached, or from attached for detached, or from new, or from the old, or from the old to the new for the new, or from produce of Eretz Yisrael for produce grown ahead. From produce from ahead to produce of Eretz Yisrael, and if he did separate truma, it is not truma. Right. All right. Yeah. We are in Shvius. Shavius. What constitutes an orchard? Whenever there are 3 trees to a betzah, if they can yield a cake of pressed figs or 60 Italian manna, the entire betzah may be plowed for their sake. If less, then no more than the space occupied by gatherer and his basket beside him beside him may be plowed. Both non-fruit bearing and fruit bearing trees are regarded as if they are fig trees. If they are capable of yielding a cake of pressed figs of 60 Italian manna, the entire betzah may be plowed for their sake. And if less, then only that which they require may be plowed. Did you want to say something? Or?
No?
Oh, okay. If one was yielding a cake of pressed figs and 2 were not yielding, or 2 were yielding and 1 was not yielding, they may only plow according to their requirements. If there are from 3 to 9, if there are from 3 to 9, if they are from 10 or more than 10, then whether they yield or not, the entire betzah might be plowed for their sake. The pasuk says, "In plowing and in harvest you shall rest." Since it is unnecessary to say plowing and harvesting in Shvius, it refers to plowing and harvesting in the year preceding, which enters into the seventh, and to harvesting at the end of the seventh, which extends into the year after Shvius. Rabbi Yishmael says, just as plowing is optional, so is harvesting optional, which excludes the harvesting of the Omer.
which is a mitzvah, right? Okay.
Definitely. My wife saw yesterday. I went to the store. A plant, not a big plant, but a little flower plant. She said it was an olive tree. I was growing this plant. She said maybe we should grow one. I said, I don't know about olive trees. Let me find out if that would be a good thing to grow. I think they get very big, and I don't know about the halachas about olive trees enough to say that that'd be a good thing to grow. You know.
Not halachas, but horticulture. You want if you want to know if it's going to be a good thing to put in your garden.
Yeah,
They do get big.
they do. Yeah, yeah. But there
Hmm.
was I don't. Then what do you do with them? What do you do with them?
You're going
It's
to eat the olives. You got
you
to
don't
pickle
eat
the
olives.
olives.
I don't eat olives, so I go for the
So
hard
then,
stuff.
so then
That's
why would you plant an olive tree?
my wife. They like these. They like these things.
Go for a rimon. The rimon has beautiful fruit.
I know, but my Ramon, the gardener, when we first moved up, gave me a Ramon tree. It's unedible.
Yeah, but that's an ornamental rimon. I've also got one of those.
Yeah, but you can't eat it. I wanted to take it out. I don't know if the gardener if I could take it out. So it's a question. So all right. Dung vessels and mud vessels through which the roots can grow out do not render plants susceptible to tuma. Tuma out of the tuma. I missed something. I turned the page the wrong way. A perforated flower pot does not render plants susceptible to tuma, but one that is not perforated does not render plants susceptible to tuma.
Does rip does.
Does is not prefer does render plants susceptible to tuma. What is the minimum measure of the hole? Large enough that a small root can go through it. If one filled it with soil to its edge, it is like a board that has no rim. Gimel Aleph. There are some things that require hechsher but do not require thought. Others that require thought and hechsher, others that require thought but not hechsher, and others neither hechsher nor thought. If foods that were normally used for consumption by humans require hechsher, they do not require thought. One cuts off flesh from a person or from a domesticated animal or from a wild animal or from fowl or from the carcass of a non-kosher bird or in caliph in the villages and all other field greens, with the exception of shmachim and mushrooms. Rabbi Yehuda says with the exception of field leek, purslane, and parsley. Rabbi Shimon says with the exception of cardoons. Rabbi Yossi says with the exception of kilusin. Those require thought and hechsher. Well, you talked
Okay.
me out of those loquats, so
Yeah.
you talked me out of it. So
They're yummy. They also become a huge tree,
that's what you're
and the
talking. The
huge
roots
tree,
go.
huge roots.
Yeah, so take care of that. An oven whose opening is vented outdoors is located inside a house, and pallbearers pass over the opening. Beit Shammai says everything becomes tummy. Beit Hillel says the oven becomes tummy, but the house remains tahor. Rabbi Akiva says even that oven remains tahor. There is an opening between the lower story and the upper story of a house that has been covered by a pot. The pot has a crack large enough for the liquid to seep in. Beis Shammai says everything in the house becomes tameh. Beis Hillel says the pot becomes tameh, but the upper story remains tahor. And Rekiva says even the pot remains tahor. If the pot is whole, Beis Hillel says it protects everything from beginning becoming tameh. However, Beit Shammai says it protects only food, liquids, and earthenware, and Beis Hillel subsequently rules like Beit Shammai. Okay. We have idios. The insides of a melon and that which is cut from a vegetable, they are truma. Reb Dosa permits the consumption by non-kohanim, but the sages prohibit their consumption by non-kohanim. 5 sheep, each of which is shorn of wool that weighs a mana and a half, are subject to the law of the first fleece. These are the words of Reb Dosa. But the Chachamim say 5 sheep shorn of wool that weighs any amount are subject to obligation. All rush mats are capable of becoming tameh with corpse tuma. These are the words of Reb Dosa, and the sages say rush mats can contract tumas midras. All braided threads are tahor except for those of a braided belt. These are the words of Reb Dosa, but the sages say all braided threads are capable of becoming tameh except for those of a cord used by wool dealers. A sling whose holder is made of woven cloth is capable of becoming tameh, but the holder is made of leather. Reb Dosa ben Harkenis rules a tahor, but the kakaman room is tameh. If the finger hold splits, it is tahor, but if the part of the cord that is user holds breaks, the sling remains its ability to become tameh. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And
Gila.
Gila, Gimel Vav.
On the 8th day of Hanukkah, we read the portion of the princes. On Purim, we read the portion of And Amala came. On Rosh Chodesh, we read the portion of On Your New Moons. On the Mamados, we read the portion of creation. On public fast, we read the portion of the blessings and curses. We may not interrupt the reading of the curses, therefore one person reads them in entirety. On Mondays, Thursdays, and a Mincha on Shabbos, we read the regular order of portions, but this reading is not taken into account. As it is said, and Moses declared the appointed seasons of Hashem to the children of Israel, the precept of each portion should be read at the appropriate time. One who reads the Megillah may stand or sit. Whether one person read it or two read it, they have fulfilled their obligation. Where there is a custom to recite a blessing afterward, we should recite the blessing. Where the custom is not to recite, we should not recite the blessing. On Monday and Thursday and on Shabbos afternoon, 3 people read from the Torah. We may not decrease them or add to them, and we do not conclude the reading with a section from prophets. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recites the blessings and said before and after it. On Rosh Chodesh and on Chol Hamoed, 4 people read from the Torah. We may not decrease or add to them, and we do not conclude the reading with a section from Nevi'im. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recites the blessings said before and after it.
So remember, back in those days, only the first person, the Kohen who comes up for the first Aliyah, says Asher Bachabanu, and the person who and they just carry on reading in between, and then only the last Oleh says Asher Nasan Lanu. But obviously, I mean, today everyone says both brachas.
This is the general rule. On any day on which there is a Musaf but not a festival, 4 people read the Torah. On festivals, 5 people read on Yom Kippur, 6 people read. On Shabbos, 7 people read. We may not decrease them, but we may increase them. And we conclude the reading for a section from Nevi'im. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recites the blessings said before and after it. We may not divide the Shema.
That's it. We're done.
Okay. All right.
Just done.
Okay.
Okay.
So, what's today? Today is Tuesday.
Okay. I got to go. Have a good day.
Have a great week. Bye.
Okay.